Yeah. Václav Havel couldn't see me because he had Margaret Thatcher. It's true. Frozen architecture. No, I mean, Czechoslovakia is an interesting case because you can see, Prague's reputation before the revolution was that it was the gloomiest city in Europe. And you can certainly see that it would have been a gloomy city if people had been marching. See that it would have been a gloomy city. And you can certainly see that it would have been, and you could have been, you could city. Would have been a gloomy city, a gloomy city, would have been. And gloomy city, and you could have been a gloomy city, and you can certainly see that it would have been Art Deco architecture. It would be just fine. The thing about Czechoslovakia. City, and you can certainly see that, and you can certainly see that it would have, and you can certainly have been a gloomy city, that it would have been a gloomy city, and you can certainly see that it would have been a gloomy city, to have been a gloomy city, gloomy city, see that it would have been. They have that same Celtic cast that you get at a West Coast Grateful Dead concert. I mean, everybody has brown hair. Czechoslovakia was exciting because all these places have an opportunity to redefine freedom, to be even more free, to push it further. And what I was doing there to have a mission, a reason to be there, was visiting the National Museum Department of Mycology, leaving off spore prints and growers' guides with people in the department who I thought might like to grow psilocybin mushrooms. And being good Slavs, they were very open to this, very excited about the idea of growing mushrooms. Cultures can be divided into mycophilic and mycophobic. And mycophobic cultures are like the English, for whom all mushrooms are toadstools. And you should put it down because you don't know where it's been. This is the basic English attitude. Well, then Slavs and Celts, there are hundreds of words in these languages for mushrooms, and mushroom outings, and people go out on Saturdays on mushroom forums. In Czechoslovakia, a national bestseller is a guide to the mushrooms of Czechoslovakia. No home can be without it. So you can imagine that it's a different attitude. Prague is further west than Vienna. It's the real center of old Europe. Of course, because of the court of Rudolf II, it was the court of all this alchemical, Protestant alchemical, political plotting, and lots of intrigue. That's why we're called the Bohemians, is because that radical style of free thought began in the principalities of Bohemia, with people deciding nobody should wear clothes, or we should get rid of money, and then everybody would do this, until the local bishop would get an army together and come and kick some sense into everybody. But over and over in Bohemia, this kind of outbreak of radical free thought was typical. Yeah.
First part of it was a rapture of these words, visions. It's a sudden shift of perspective. I realized that the visions were all taking place inside of the state. Giant snake. Visions were actually being projected on the skin. Some kind of writhing movement. Later, I found that the other people in the circle were having visions of snakes too. Recently, a shaman strong, this I lost my pages and almost all of them have snakes in them. Is that a common thing?
Well, it's an interesting question, why do drugs have identities like this, and do they have them? And the answer is yes, they certainly do. And it's one of the puzzling pieces of information that I always keep in front of myself when trying to understand these things, that it's irrational that, for instance, no matter who you are, Viennese Jew, Icelandic ski instructor, Irish pub owner, if you take ayahuasca, you will see large snakes, large cats, and dancing black people. In this order of statistical frequency, with black people being not as common as cats and snakes, cats being not as common as snakes, snakes being the most common. Well, what's going on here? How can it be that a chemical compound that can be defined down to the quantum mechanical positions of the atoms nevertheless seems to have and carry informational content of some sort? Well, I don't know. But here is one possibility, and maybe there are others. Maybe this is support for Sheldrake's hypothesis of formative causation, that actually around the drug, a complex of ideas has accreted itself in some kind of psychological hyperspace. A pattern has been worn in hyperspace, which is the pattern of how this drug works. And it's really, in some sense, a composite of all the trips of all the people who ever took it. Well, since for the first 20,000 years, all the people who ever took ayahuasca had snake and jaguar fear as a major source of anxiety. We discover that up front. But of course, now why the dancing black people? This becomes less easy to understand. Well, this is the other possibility, see, that the reason these things are so message specific is that this is the plant. This is its presentation. Like with ayahuasca particularly, its language is visual. I mean, after a strong ayahuasca session, your eyes are bugging out of your head. It's like a visit to Madison Avenue to buy prints. I mean, you just looked at so many prints and looked and compared the Bruegel to the Bosch and the Bosch to the Buffon, all this stuff. Look. And, but then, for instance, with mushrooms, it's actually verbal. It speaks, it tells you things in plain English, in a conversational mode. I don't understand. The more I live, the longer I see of all this stuff, the less I feel that I understand of what is going on. You mean a psychedelic plant like that? Yeah, but why would it have one presentational mode over another? Well, I guess this is what we're left with, that these are the masks by which we understand these things. What happens with the mushroom is it always has a presentational personality, but then when you inquire, you discover that this presentational personality is created for your convenience, and that behind it lurks God knows what. And then when you begin to talk to it about that, that's when the trip turns off to the left and begins to get peculiar, because you're inquiring into its inner nature. I mean, with the mushroom, you can actually say, show me more of what you really are. And immediately, the trip will take a turn away from the dancing mice and all that cheerful hypnagogic riffraff, and towards something, say, okay, that's enough of who you really are. Reassure me now. So yeah, these things are like personalities, minds. But the question for me is, it's such a strange way to communicate that here is a life form that it can't communicate unless you eat it, unless it's inside you. And then somehow the moray of its being and your being mesh together, and then these images spring into being. But it is in the very act of passing away and being consumed in your metabolism. It's like some kind of act of love or something. What is it like to take a person? Well, I asked it once what it wanted to be called, and it said, "Call me Dorothy." Dorothy. And I said, "Why?" And it said, "Because this seems like Oz to me." I just report these things. I don't know why it wanted to be called Dorothy. Report these things.
Mystic Fire.
Way to encroaching doom.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the PT Burnem ZnZerna Music Hour. It's been a little bit of a late start tonight. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we are going, and I'm going to jump right into it. I'm really excited about what we got tonight. We got some really pretty pianos that I've got laid out. I'll show you the tech that I'm working with tonight is just the MPC, running keys, and then sending some of the signal from those keys and another little secret synced up instrument to the Strega here, which is giving us a really nice dusty ambience to work with. I think I could show you this. So I've got these pianos coming out of the MPC. I've got some drones coming out of the Strega, and the Pulsar is going to be creating some drum stuff as well. Got some lights hooked up. We're going to save physical objects for next week, though. Yeah, that about covers it. We got Terrence McKenna coming through on the tape machine.
Cancer or a tumor. It's a calcareous growth on the psyche that if we do not have this embeddedness in the vegetable matrix of Gaia, then anxiety arises. A lot of it sexual and related to self-identity, and I don't have to discuss this with you, just refer you to
all right.
and
Here we go.
Gang, everybody
I've got my chat popped out.
We are. The question is
So
why.
say hi if you feel like
This
it.
is why.
Otherwise,
Because we
just
have
sit
been
back
in a
and
permanent state
let
of
it run.
erotic disequilibrium
Make yourself
for 15,000
comfortable, or make yourself dinner, whatever
Every
you're gonna
move
do.
to attempt to correct this has pushed us further
I'm
away
excited tonight.
from the goal that we want to have.
Yeah, I'm just
so
gonna
now
jump
we
right on
arrive
in.
at the 20th, late
Yeah,
20th
here we go.
century. Nuclear arsenals fully in hand. We have made since the 15th century a demonic pact with matter that has allowed us great insight into the destructive properties of matter, made us, handmaiden to the devil, and yet we are still completely dark about our own motivations, how to educate our children, how to put in place a set of values that don't loot the future, and all of these problems appear to be getting worse. So, well, my response to this is to advocate the only thing that I think
Oh,
will work.
we've also got
But it's
Mononoke
not a political
running
position, because
drones
a
and
political
some
position
string type.
also implies willingness to compromise and negotiate with the other side. And there really is no willingness to negotiate on the part of the psychedelic position, because it's pretty non-negotiable. We're at the end of a process, call it 2,000, 5,000, choose your date, but a long process of denial of human nature first, and then war against human nature. And it goes so deep into our culture that we don't even know where the basement level is. I mean, for instance, to my mind, monotheism, which is the great intellectual edifice of the West, touches the three major religions of the West that have developed in continuous strain since Abraham.
What's up?
Monotheism is the institutionalizing of this egocentric
What's up, Barry?
model.
Good to have you with us
it
tonight.
has a certain philosophical.
This is definitely a preview of some stuff that's going to end up somewhere.
One God, everything.
This
all
is
roads lead to Rome. You can trace everything
been on my
back
mind
to
since I made it.
Ur,
So I'm excited to have you
But
guesting
that-
in to hear it.
That anal retentive appeal in itself takes place within a context of values of male dominance, created linearity, uniformity, so forth, and so on. And I think what we have to get into is a real permission for sloppiness, for loose-endedness, for the abandonment of any myth of closure, that there is no closure. There are models and there are questions, but all models are provisional. And anybody who says they have answers is highly, highly suspect. And too many people claim answers. What's being claimed here is a technique, and then you figure out your own questions and your own answers. And it's different for everybody. There really is no ideology associated with psychedelics. If you look at the people who've been involved with it, they've said completely different things and contradictory. Some are rationalists and behaviorists to this day, and others are spiritual visionaries, hierarchical, shamanic types. The main thing is to reclaim the experience as the first step toward being politically empowered in order to act. In other words, we're in, and I indicated this last night, although more gently, that we're in a state of enforced infantilism about the capacity of our minds that
It's cool, Barry. You're definitely going to get the audio on this one. I just finished mixing the John C. Lilly EP, so that'll be dropping too. In my humble opinion, these collection EPs that I've been dropping each month just get better and better. What I'm going to do with this one, I'm feeling very, very confident about.
That hovers around the psychedelic experience that was mentioned last night. It's strong in my mind. I haven't found any real solution that can hold your nose in the jump. But the issue is surrender. This is something real. You don't find people going into the ashram in the morning to meditate with their knees knocking in fear because of how terrifying and profound they know that meditation is going to be. But if they were going in there to smoke DMT, they would be fully riveted on the modalities of what was about to happen. I mean, we can tell shit from Shinola. It's just that we don't always prefer Shinola. And I'm not like, I don't advocate it. People, like sometimes there are people who are disappointed because they say, well, how often do you do it? Well, the answer is not very often. I mean, if I can get it in a couple or 3 times a year, I feel like I'm hitting it pretty hard. And the more successful it is, the less often you have to do it. I mean, I know people who say DMT is their most favorite drug. And when you say, well, when was the last time you did it? They say, well, 1967. It only lasted 4 minutes. They're still processing it. And they are still processing it. They're not just whistling Dixie. I mean, it is, to my mind, how do we keep the lid on this stuff? And I suppose here I'm preaching to the converted, because many people last night said they had an interest in this kind of thing. But they don't keep the lid on section.
Good to see you, Futures.
No society has ever had it so under control that people didn't have sex.
Check out these hi-hats, man.
Under weird conditions and under...
Listen how clicky and shaky they get.
But we are like this salamander that has the option of never developing into its mature form. And to my mind, that's a tragedy, because this is our birthright, and somehow our inability to get a grip on our local problems has to do with this immaturity about our mental state. The two, I feel very strongly, are linked, and that of course we can't get control of the world because we are children in some profound way.
I put some sub bass behind those strings.
But the culture,
The sub is being provided by the Pulsar.
and
The strings are coming from the MPC. MPCs have grown up a lot in our time, Josh. They really have.
I don't know how many of you remember in Brave New
Ooh.
but there's a scene where Burnem is the guy who's out because in his fetal fluid they got an alcohol contaminant. So he's different from everybody else in society, and he occasionally has original thoughts. And he and his assigned girlfriend for the evening, whatever she is, in a helicopter, and they sweep out and he suspends the helicopter over the Black Bay, and she immediately becomes very agitated, restless, anxious, pleads to return to the city. And what it is it's her anxiety of being alone, restless, anxious. She literally can't take it. And I think there are a lot of society, and each
Floppy disks, zip drives.
who have within
Beautiful
them
times.
this
Big hardware. I'm so happy with the manufacturers that have kept their hardware large. I'm happy with their small devices too, but you know, for those of us with larger hands, big chunky hardware is nice, feels good. That's why I like the Pulsar. It's over here. Big orange boy, you can only just see the corner here. Big metal piece.
They want to be able to say they did. They don't ever want to face an actual moment where they put it all on the line. And yet the whole issue of this stuff is to let it show what it wants to show. So somehow, individually, we have to reclaim our experience. The real message, more important even than the psychedelic experience, the real message that I try to leave with people this weekend is the primacy of direct experience. That as people, the real universe is, within your reach, always. Everything not within your reach is basically unconfirmed rumor. And we insert ourselves like ants or honeybees into hierarchies of knowledge. So we say, well, what's going on in the world? Well, turn on CNN, and then somehow we're ordered and say, okay, it's 85 degrees in Baghdad and the wind is out of the northeast at 15 miles an hour. And we feel somehow better now because we're getting the information. But what we have done is sold out direct experience.
That's the Pulsar.
All institutions require this of us, that we somehow redefine ourselves for the convenience of the institution. And this redefinition always involves a narrowing, a denial, so that, if you want to be in Marxist society, if you want to function in Marxist society, you have to define yourself as a Marxist human being. Well, it turns out in a Marxist society, there are no homosexuals. It happens in Japanese. And, if you happen to notice any tendency like this in yourself, you have to deny it.
Oh, yes, Barry.
This just doesn't happen in a Marxist society. And similarly, every society has this. In our society, if you hear voices, we have mental voices. If you have vast visions, future, we have drugs that can help you and make this go away.
Nice little section, huh?
So then somehow, in modern society, the discovery of psychedelics is the discovery that all of this cultural machinery is just Wizard of Oz stuff. Remember the scene in Wizard of Oz where the curtain is swept back and they see the little guy there, and he says, booming out over the loudspeaker, ignore the little man pulling the levers. Ignore the little man pulling the levers. Is what sweeps into view with psychedelics, and you discover, culture is permission. Whether we have 9 wives or 3, whether we tattoo ourselves blue, whether we eat insects or not, all of these things are just decisions that we make, and then we congratulate ourselves on our wisdom, and we live within that.
I'm glad to hear it, Barry. One in infinite zero, I'm always glad to make you happy, sonically.
Being somebody that with, I don't see history as a wrong turning. I see it, the metaphor that I like is that of the prodigal son, that there was a reason for this long descent into manhood, this peregrination. It was a shamanic journey of some sort. The shaman goes into the world pool or ascends the world tree to go to the center
cover the pearl.
What history was. It was a descent into the hell worlds of matter, energy, space, and time for the purpose of recovering something that was lost. It wasn't lost by us. It was lost by the breathing, the disystole of the planet. Just climax and climate moved us into paradise and then moved us out. I mean, you look at the story of Eden is the story of history's first drug bust. I mean, it's the story of a whole lot of tension over who's going to take or not take a certain plant which confers knowledge. And Yahweh, wandering in the garden, says to himself, if the man and the woman eat of the
He
fruit,
said
they will become
the
as
fall from Eden was the first
issue
drug
was
bust.
co-equality, co-knowledge with the Creator. Well, where do we stand in man's existential march? How does that work? Can we always accept the subservient infantile position in his knowledge to be dispensed by gods, and if not gods, then the institutions that appoint themselves as gods over us? Or is it actually that maturity begins that someone cover the visible? And I don't know if a society can survive the claiming of this birthright by a large number of people. Certainly in the 1960s when this was attempted, everybody got very agitated, and then it was frozen out. In so-called primitive or pre-literate societies, there is the office of the shaman, and the shaman is deputized to act for all of us in the same way that we have airplane mechanics to fix jet engines. We have shamans to explore these hidden and fairly terrifying other dimensions. The people who self-select themselves into a group like this in a society like that would be the candidates for this kind of shamanic origin. Well, so then what is it finally all for? Or is it for anything? Is it just maybe my problem that I think it's for something? Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, see, we have real problems. We could perish from this planet.
Yes, let's go!
Kind of radioactive petroleum war or what have
Party
you.
of One was a
And it
lesser-known
wouldn't change
spin-off
the fact
Party
that
of Five.
shamanism did exist,
And it was just
that
foot bags
these dimensions
doing
were there and
live
were
from the depths every
explored
Sunday.
by courageous, high-minded people for thousands of years. But I think that the scientific mind, and maybe even the American mind, can bring something special.
Barry, I like that
That's
you were like, oh, a raid of one, and your icon is a sword.
And I think maybe what this has to do with is, I've talked a bit in the past, a lot in the past, about what I call visible language. Visible language is something that I encountered in a psychedelic state. Could never have dreamed it up by myself. Encountered it as an existential fact. Then had to sort of reason backward from it to what would it be good for. Well, what is it? What is visible language? Well, it's very simply, it's language which you look at rather than hear. And don't ask me how this can happen. It obviously has something to do with synesthesias in the brain, with swapping neural processing units, and somehow shunting a stream of data which would normally be audially interpreted. Instead, it goes to the visual cortex. And this occurs often in DMT intoxication. And it has a long and noble history in the Amazon, in ayahuasca shamanism. Ayahuasca ayahuasca, as you probably know, is a combinatory drug made of a vine combined with the leaves of another plant, and it makes DMT orally active. Normally DMT is destroyed in the gut, but you take it in combo with this other thing, beta-carboline, and then it's active. Well, in the Amazon, these people sing what they call icaros, magical songs. And these magical songs are given to them by the spirits, whatever those are, invisible entities. But the magical songs are invariably criticized pictorially in sculpture rather than musically. Nobody ever talks about how these things sound. People only talk about how they look. And I had read about this and heard about it and went down there and spent time, again, curiosity is the only method, poking around.
You know what? Let's go, Barry. Let's make it happen. We'll raid somebody tonight. You decide who we do it.
I had seen
And
it before.
One Infinite Zero is also a moderator, so maybe check it out there. I don't know if you guys can talk to each other or what, but let's start by raiding somebody tonight. Let's do it. It's good raiding music.
Rattling around on the floor in front of you.
This concludes Side A.
Well, first of all, notice language, ordinary language, what a weird thing it is, and yet we do it with such facility.
You let me know if I need to do anything for it. I'm sure I do, but
impairment.
Yeah, I'm down. Tonight, I'm down. Let's go.
Deficient in a very serious way. Blindness is as nothing to me. Seriously, language deficient, and so forth and so on. So it's really the defining thing for us. And yet, it's almost like a half miracle. I mean, you can study it. There's no problem with getting vast samples of tape recordings. You can analyze it syntactically. There have been many theories of syntax, philosophies of syntax. And yet, what is it? How can we make meaning with such facility when the rest of nature seems totally unconcerned with this? And what is meaning, anyway? Why is it so important to us? We say if there is no meaning, if life has no meaning, it's not worth living. Well, how do ants and bees and scallops stack up on that opinion? Do they also feel that meaning is the quintessential aspect of reality? And yet we make it. We make it out of ourselves. And then we get together with somebody else and we try to make meaning. We say, you and I could have an affair, or you and I could start a business. This will have a lot of meaning for us. And, we'll make money.
Let's go, pizza fish. We will try to keep these waves
whatever it
rolling.
is, and C.B. Broad wrote a book called The Meaning of Meaning, which deals with it in about 400 pages. But whatever it is, it's very important to us, and it seems to have different modalities. For instance, dance can have meaning, painting can have meaning, spoken or textual words have meaning. But because of biases in ourselves as an organism, what seems to have the most meaning is what we can see. Our visual, we have a tremendously rich sense of visual input. Well, for some reason, under the influence of these psychedelic drugs and certain exercises, and who knows what else it takes to shake you out of your cage, but suddenly syntactical organization, which has been invisible in the background of the program of meaning, becomes visible, and you actually see the engines of syntax. You actually behold the machinery of meaning itself. And for some reason, this is very satisfying. It's like an ecstasy. It's like an affirmation of some sort that is transcendental. There is a recognition in it that transcends the felt apperception of ordinary. You know, in other words, that you're gazing something in the face. Well, it seems to me that what all this suggests, by all this I mean the human capacity for the psychedelic experience, the human facility for switching these linguistic channels from the beheld to the seen, what all this must mean is that history is nothing more than a transition phase from the felt intuition, the mute intuition of the animal body, to fully expressible three-dimensional meaning, and that the descent into matter that technology represents is because you can't do this entirely on the match. There has to be a certain augmentation of the human organism in order to do this. It may be pharmacological, it may be neurological, it may be nanotechnological, and then some part of the other two. But whatever it is, and we are coming up under the underbelly of meaning, boring from beneath, and that we're just about to hit the jackpot. And this is what the historical process is, and the proliferation of media, of the discovery of perspective 500 years ago, oil painting, airbrushing, digital sound, all of these things are this summoning of the image. So we are actually moving toward a kind of self-fulfilling process. It's something that we're defining for ourselves as it approaches, and it is defining itself for itself as it approaches. You actually experience this on psychedelics sometimes. And the way it works for me on mushrooms or sometimes DMT is there is a black space, and then I hear the what I call the elf music or the Irish band, and it's far away, and as it comes closer, I see light, and as it comes closer, it both gets louder and the light fills the stage of awareness until finally the soothed under the visual impression of the thing, and then it's all around you, and it is this domain of self-transforming language, and I call them language elves, but what they may be is nothing more than self-reflective, compound, complex sentences. It's hard to tell what they are, because we're not used to having our sentences stand up and embrace it. But nevertheless, the nature of reality is fractal, and it can't have been lost upon any of you that in a fractal universe, text is composed of characters, the characters of a given alphabet, but reality is also composed of characters like you and me, who live out some kind of plot. Well, when you get characters into a text, in other words, characters, negative characters, then you begin to feel the textual richness and the linguistic
Just give me a
richness
name,
that
Barry.
seems to be not in the forefront of reality, but actually to lie behind it. I mean, the final conclusion, not the final conclusion, but the most recent conclusion that I'm coming to looking at the psychedelic experience is how phenomenally text-like reality is. I mean, it's more text-like than one should decently say. This is much more like a work of art than anything recognizable from my physics class. I mean, my physics class was about atoms and electrons and momentum and conservation of energy. My literature class, on the other hand, was all about personality, motivation, history, the light. presented as a member of a class. We are always presented to ourselves as members of some class, and yet we experience ourselves as unique objects. But there is no reinforcement for that experience of uniqueness.
Barry Radin from the tablet. I like it.
Very special.
Let's go.
That's about all the reinforcement for your uniqueness you get. And your mother also tells you this. But then you take a psychedelic plant and you discover, no, hey, I'm Christopher Columbus. I'm Magellan. I could be anybody. I'm not defined in these narrow ways. There are doorways in my reality.
I don't want to be
to areas of experience as large as the area of experience that Christopher Columbus or Magellan took as their province. But it's all, this new freedom is achieved by directing attention back at the individual. So, about saving and restructuring institutions and that sort of thing. I'm not very much interested in saving and restructuring very many institutions. I think institutions have done us about all the good we can stand at this point. And, but then they wave the black flag of anarchy. Say, oh, we're just tossing chaos. Madness. Chaos, yes. Madness, maybe. But disorder, never. This surrender issue, when translated out of the realm of the individual and into the realm of the collectivity, we all, as a society, must also surrender to what is happening to us, because history is sometimes psychedelic experience, and it isn't. There's nobody around who has the right plan. So it isn't about how we need to locate the people with the right plan and then give them a lot of money and get out of their way. It doesn't work like that. The right plan will emerge almost simultaneously in everybody's mind at the same moment. And in the meantime, we all are going to have this sort of half-baked plan that we can't articulate, that we can't quite bring out. It's a quality of the time. I'm going to talk this afternoon more about the quality of the time. But we can't think any more clearly than we're thinking at the moment when we're thinking at our best. Part of what history is a clarification of the human situation. And I think you have to press the envelope. You have to keep your nose against the glass, forcing the definitions into every territory, but not anxious. It's like a growth process. We can't evolve any faster than our language evolves. The language is the thing in which we're embedded. So the use of technologies like virtual reality, or drugs like psilocybin and DMT, or practices of various sorts of very cool and effective,
what do you think? We should rate
on the evolution
after I thank my dust cats, like right at the end of the stream? That's the deal.
And we seem to be courses, language courses, to get you to think a certain way, to get you to carve out of the background of undifferentiated data certain things which you previously couldn't see, auras or architecture of or states of disease, and it can be anything. But the mind sensitizes itself to phenomena by following language into the forest of the unknown. And most people have no stomach for this, prefer to stay back in the village and kill time grinding wheat and drying meat around the fire. But you can almost make a kind of a fractal quasi-reductionist argument and say that people are like electrons, and you don't learn what electrons really are until you get just one off by itself. then you have an electrical current. And an electrical current operates according to laws and rules and constraints completely different from an electron. And what we have done very perversely as a society is taken the laws of large numbers, how 1 million people act, how 10 million people act, and then we have applied it back to ourselves as individuals. So, well, why am I not happy? 70% of everybody does X and I don't, and I'm not happy then.
Cool.
Trying to redefine yourself
Sounds good.
as against a very large body of statistical data. All of this is dehumanizing. All of this is bad mental hygiene, usually quickly cleared away by psychedelics. Because what they show you is, that you are unique. And that the confluence of space and time that you're operating in is unique. And that any model that is put forward is, number one, provisional. Provisional means it can be abandoned at any moment. And then the second and most important, any model you can't understand is useless. So, most of us can't understand most of the models. I mean, who here would care to walk to the blackboard and first stage of quantum electrodynamics? And yet we all know that our world is supposedly hung on this very well thought out theory that experts are in charge of. But notice, no pun intended, but notice that if experts are in charge of it, you're not. It's absolutely useless to you. So, is useless. So useless is, it turns out, it's a thin soup rather quickly. This is no cause for despair. This doesn't mean you should go back to night school and study quantum physics. That's the wrong conclusion. It means that all of this stuff that you thought were the high walls of reality are just smoke blown by somebody else. These constraints are not binding upon you at all. Somebody said to me once, their father had been a professional scientist, and he said once, I never would have seen it if I hadn't known it was there. And we all are in the habit of seeing all kinds of things because we know that they're there. And in many places they're not there. And you just walk through and discover all kinds of things. I mean, I am convinced that anybody who has a major psychedelic trip, at some point in that trip, their eye falls on things no human eye has ever seen before, or ever will see again. It's that big in there. It's not at all clear that we're mapping generalizable reality. It may be that it's just so huge that never do we pass through the same matrix twice. Well, that means you can give up on closure. You can give up on any theory that will ever give you very much more than provisional handle on what's going on. And I think this is probably a good step to take, to open ourselves to the freedom that lies beyond culture. Culture is a kind of prison, and the only way that we know to get
Sounds good, Barry.
is to dissolve.
I love it. I'll let you know when to pull the trigger on that.
And then you really explore the baseline being, or you can dissolve it with trust. But then you dissolve your own cultural programming. Money works, and this, while the education I do is useless. So, and really what is so is invisible has made us the inheritors of a tradition of existential emptiness, really. But that has impelled us to go back to the jungles and to recover this thing. It's all of a piece, you see. I mean, these people in the Amazon and whatnot were keeping this cultural flame burning. But these cultures are now all dead. They are either dead or in a state of advanced, suspended animation. I mean, the best anyone hopes for when they go to a rainforest culture is that it be somehow resisting the change all around it. There's no rainforest culture that is elaborating new forms and thriving on its own terms. So all the things that were learned, the legacy of the ancestors, is now laid basically at the feet of this high-tech electronic society. And the question is, can we dream a dream sufficiently noble that we give meaning to the sacrifices that have been made to allow the 20th century to exist? The amount of blood shed and infectious diseases spread around, metals ripped out of the earth, mountains moved, railroads laid across continents. All of this stuff as the means to reclaiming the human birthright that science finds from. It's a very strange enterprise. I mean, it's hard to put it across because the thing is, it's real, and we're in the effort, in the habit of thinking that the mind can move unobstructed from one edge of the universe to the other, that there are no secrets, but actually there are secrets. At least these are secrets, and hard to tell. I mean, I tell them, you hear them. We seem to have been allowed a cosmic dispensation. But why that is very hard for me to understand. I would have thought that this would have been headline news 20,000 years ago, right up until...
Okay, so we are
instead, it's very
closing in on the end of the session here.
To us.
And I would love to take this opportunity to thank my Dust Cats. All the folks that are really killing it and making it possible for this to happen, for me to have the time to work on these things.
To carry information back and forth.
Honestly,
between these worlds.
I've been thinking about how nice that is lately. Got this little spot holding it down in Richmond, working these musical compositions daily, and it feels really great. So thank you to all my Dust Cats for that. Specifically, thank you to my DigiCats. There will be stuff coming up, as I was talking about, on the Patreon site very soon. Thank you to my Zerna Cats, Erica Pontiac, Melissa Schick, Kenny Creech, Gerard Schultz, Rincat, thank you very much. Mikey, it was good to see you at the show the other day. Mama Cat, what's up? Thank you so much. Austin Avalanche Snell, Jen Dudley, Wayne Anderson, Austin Cat, Scarlett Herrera. It was nice to see you at the show. Dogfuck, come sliding in. I need to see you soon. We gotta have some coffee. Sam Seeger, Visitor 10. Eric Akers, thank you very much. Thank you very much to my Mary O'Brien for helping out in myriad ways.
Everything is obvious.
Thank you very much, last but not least, to Barry.
I think it's because we haven't
My Royal Blue.
Well,
Huge
so
thanks.
that's sort of sort of a survey of some of this.
For the multiple
Thank you
parts
very
that you
much.
play. For the multiple parts
Please
that you play.
continue to take 3.
I like
Mystic
that.
Fire, Video and Audio, proudly presents Terrence McKenna.
Mystic Fire. So, let's see.
Anybody's living in the woods.
We're gonna play around for another minute or two, and then we're gonna raid.
Sort of slammed shut in that paradigm. And is it our fault?
We're gonna raid Antler Beast.
Well, I mean, as
So,
somebody who lived through all that,
let's see how that
I guess
goes.
It was the hardest lesson that we had to learn.
Give me like
was
2 minutes.
How big a revolution you can have, and how quickly they can toss water on it and have business as usual. Eric Yonch introduced me to the term metastable, and it certainly is true that many, many things are metastable. You think it looks easy to push it over, but when you start pushing, you discover that the Leaning Tower of Pisa goes 800 feet underground or something, and it's not moving anywhere. I don't know. I think that there's a real constipation in the historical process. We talk about how the 20th century is this century of tremendous change and innovation, but actually they've been remarkably successful in forestalling any true outbreak of the future. I mean, the most science fiction moment in the 20th century, or one of the most science fiction moments to date, is probably 1939. If you think about 1939, if you think about the V-2 rockets raining down on London and Germany in the grip of a leader with a genetic race theory that he plans to establish for 1,000 years, this is science fiction style talk. Rocket bombs and master races and robot armies and all that stuff. Well, so then it was quenched. Fascism was sort of quenched. Actually, it infected everybody who got near it to the point that everybody was a fascist. But also, everybody went back to work, realizing very self-centered ideals. In the United States, what had happened was that paradise had been promised, the generation that would defeat fascism. But because it isn't easy to deliver paradise, it had to be tacky. So then you get Levitan and the suburbs and modular building and Bauhaus style design. This is an effort to create, a proletarian paradise. The Marxists talked proletarian paradise, but the American middle class actually created it during the 50s. Then in the 60s, what happened was, the precondition for social upheaval seemed to be an extremely unpopular war being prosecuted thousands and thousands of miles from home. And then LSD, which was a unique phenomenon because so much could be made so easily. I mean, there are few weapons on Earth, even gas. It's hard to create enough poison gas to kill 1 million people. A guy with a small bathroom can create enough LSD to stone 1 million people. But I think that what the lesson I drew from the 60s is that history can't be rushed, and that history is not made by individuals, even righteous individuals. That, what Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage and its people merely players. They have their entrances and their exits, and each man in his time plays many parts. It is a work of literature, somehow. And the 60s, for all of what it was, it must be that it was only prelude. And they managed to get the lid back on. But I think at great detriment to themselves, because what's the change is like a gas, it's like the keyhole that comes to another
Hell yeah. Cool. I'll check that out. The wound is not the body. Alright. Well, we are about to raid, so yeah, you can drop me a link for sure. But yeah. I think we're ready to raid. Let's go. Let's see if it works. Okay. So I'll just type it in. Okay, wait, let's see. Okay, here we go.